Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. Since my last update, it has turned very wet in parts of the UK, particularly in the south. My weather station here in Berkhamsted has recorded copious quantities of rain in recent days. The 49.4 millimetres there on the 23rd stands out, and I have to admit to being just a little bit disappointed from a statistical point of view not to reach the 50 millimetre mark. Now, with that said, I'm also very grateful to have avoided the flooding which has affected many low-lying areas around me. I live on top of a hill, so it does have some advantages. Now, can we expect more rain as we head through the next 2 weeks? Let's have a look. And the animation runs from 18 GMT, Tuesday the 24th. At the outset, there is something of a respite in southern and central parts of the UK, drier conditions with rain mostly affecting Scotland. But what happens as I run this sequence is areas of low pressure steam in from the Atlantic, tracking quite a long way south, so further heavy outbreaks of rain are likely at times in southern and central regions. But as we head towards the weekend, those low pressure systems move away eastwards, taking their rain with them. A cold plunge of Arctic air moves southwards for a time, but then high pressure begins to build in from the west, and that holds out the promise of drier conditions in southern and central regions at least through the weekend. But it's all changed again by the end of the weekend and into early next week. That nasty looking area of low pressure bringing cloud, rain and strong winds to really all parts of the country if this particular computer model run is correct. By the end though, Wednesday the 22nd, it's a weak ridge of high pressure building in from the southwest, bringing the possibility at least of a drier day or two, so maybe another respite developing by the end of week 1. Here's the jet stream and 850 HPA temperature sequence. The mottled shaded area there shows the path of the jet stream, and notice that it's actually quite a long way south. It's heading down in southern England into France, and that's why the wettest conditions have really affected the south in recent days. As I run this, what we see is that colder air moves down for a time, but then it's really a mixed pattern. Jet stream there, areas of low pressure associated with it, continuing to move in from the Atlantic. Perhaps by the end here there are some indication for the jet being just a little bit further north, so tracking across Northern Ireland and the northern half UK, at least for focus of it. But all in all, it's a very mixed outlook. In terms of the weather conditions we can expect to experience down at the ground level, a few charts to illustrate. This is 15 GMT on Wednesday. At this point, the next weather systems are moving in from the Atlantic, from the west. So there's rain there in Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest of England. It's tending to be drier in the north and the east, although there are some showers in Scotland. Temperatures, coldest in the north. You can see some low values there of the Scottish Highlands, up to about 15, 16 Celsius in the southeast, so not warm anywhere. And I think that really sets the theme for the coming days, because by Friday, if anything, temperatures have dipped a little bit. This still has showers or long spells of rain in southern and central regions. There is some uncertainty about how quickly those more persistent outbreaks of rain will be clearing away on Friday. Then into the weekend, temperatures remaining on the low side, but dry conditions starting to return, although there is still some light rain there in parts of the west, at least according to this. Into the early part of next week, it's all changed again, that deep area of low pressure, bringing further showers and heavier and more persistent spells of rain to really much of the UK. Winds could also be strong at times, as I've already mentioned. The UKV charts here again, just for illustrative purposes. Wednesday at 21 GMT on the left, Thursday 12 GMT on the right. So just maybe pointed towards a possibility of gales there in southwestern coastal counties, and then maybe in northern Wales and northwestern England. So it is something to keep an eye on, really compounding the unpleasant nature of the weather with the rain at the same time. And talking of that, here are the accumulated rain totals for days 0 to 5. ECM on the left, GFS on the right. They both point to really the highest totals there affecting northern parts of England, but all regions seeing measurable amounts, even in the south there between 10 and 20 millimetres according to the GFS, higher values according to the ECM. So really all parts of the UK at risk of significant amounts of rain through this period, and that continues to be the case through the 0 to 10 day period. The totals have really stacked up, the oranges starting to appear in places, the greens becoming more widespread, those suggest between 60 and 80 millimetres of rain. So it does look quite wet, wet or even very wet in all parts of the UK. So do all the major deterministic models point towards a changeable or unsettled pattern towards the end of the first week? Here is the GFS, Tuesday the 1st of October. A nasty area of low pressure here, just starting to pull away eastwards, northeastwards, but showers or long spells of rain and strong winds for much of the UK. And the Canadian model, well, this one looks quite nasty, doesn't it? A bullseye area of low pressure over the central part of the United Kingdom. So no surprises, it's unsettled, potentially wet and windy. But the German icon, well, this is significantly different. There's a ridge of high pressure moving eastwards across the United Kingdom. It's not a particularly robust looking one, but nonetheless, there it is. So drier at this point, if it is correct for many areas. Onto the European model, back to a low pressure dominated scenario. This also looks quite nasty, showers or long spells of rain. Finally, the UK Met Office Global. A bit different, although it's low pressure dominated, showers or long spells of rain being a risk, it's not such a deep area of low pressure. Winds associated with it would be a lot lighter than on some of those other computer model runs. So there are notable differences there between the different deterministics, particularly with the German icon, which is going for a drier, high pressure dominated scenario, at least for a time. That would appear to be the outlier, but experience tells me to never discount the outlier model. It could be the correct one. It's unlikely, though. On balance, the favoured scenario for the end of week 1 is changeable or unsettled conditions with low pressure close to the UK, the possibility of strong winds, showers or longer spells of rain. Does that continue to be the theme as we head through the second week? As ever, just the trends and the probabilities, starting with the 16-day GEFS plots for London. Upper air temperatures across the top, well, close to or slightly below the average. The ensemble mean, the thick purple line there, staying close to the thick black line, the 30-year norm. I think it is being pulled up a little bit by 1 or 2 very warm runs which are in the mix there, and once more, don't discount those, they could verify, but they are in a small minority, therefore it is unlikely they will prove to be correct. Across the bottom, there's an ongoing risk of rain, quite a few spikes appear throughout the second week. It doesn't look terribly wet, I'd say it looks quite wet, so if you compare it to earlier in the period, the first few days there, you can see some big rain spikes, very wet scenario in week 1. But as I say, through the second week, the rain risk appears to be ongoing, but quite wet rather than very wet would probably be a better summation of it. 2-meter temperatures using the data tables, lots of yellow in those columns. There is something of an upwards trend with more orange appearing, those runs going for between 16 and 20. But all in all, it looks like temperatures will probably be close to or maybe a little bit below the average. Lots of green shade in for the overnight lows between 6 and 10 Celsius. So there could well be some chilly nights even in the south. Remember, these are for London. Just jump out 20 to 30 miles into the home counties, into more rural areas, and you could expect values to be lower. Up to Manchester, very, very similar. Close to or slightly below the average. Rain risk ongoing, and the 2-meter temperatures slightly lower than they were on the London tables, but the broad trends are the same. Glasgow, at this point in the UK, I would say the signal for slightly below average temperatures is greater, at least at the 850 HPA level. hence I've shaded the arrow in blue. The reason, though, isn't because the big cluster of runs is significantly different. I think it's because there are fewer which are bringing in that warm air, which appeared on the Manchester and London charts, and therefore the mean is not being skewed in the same way as it was on those other two. So the signal here, as I say, is slightly clearer, but I think it's really a very similar pattern. In terms of rain, rather wet there through week 2, plenty of rain spikes continuing to appear. The 2 metre temperatures for Glasgow, yellows 11 to 15s and light greens 6 to 10s. And the overnight lows, lots of dark green appearing between 1 and 5 Celsius, some blue there too. So I think all in all, temperatures here close to or slightly below the average overall, and there could be some distinctly chilly nights. Rainfall across the UK through the second week. The ECM probability charts here show the chance of 5 millimetres or more of rain falling on the first 3 days of the second week. Well, as I say, it looks like quite an unsettled, wet picture. The amounts, the percentage chance varying. Generally, the lowest chance being in the east of Britain. With that said, even there it's quite high at times. And that continues to be the overall pattern through the following 3 days, although maybe, just maybe, a greater chance of some drier periods developing here later in the second week. The mean surface level pressure data table for York, so going through week 2, has quite a mix. There's some green there, significant amounts of green in the columns. Those runs going for between 996 to 1010 millibars. Yellows, generally close to average pressure. A few of the yellow runs will be a bit below it, a few above it. Some higher pressure dominated runs, the orange there, and that's tending to increase perhaps towards the very end of the second week. The amount of blue also decreases. Those are runs going for notably low pressure. So just maybe fitting together with those ECM rain probability charts, which indicated a greater chance of dry periods towards the very end of the period. But I wouldn't place too much stock in that at this range, of course. The mean surface level pressure chart for Friday, the 4th of October from the GEFS, so generated averaging out all of the individual runs, points to an Atlantic flow across the UK. Lowest pressure there in the north, highest in the south, a very typical pattern. Maybe more of a west or northwesterly tilt on it than would be usual. Therefore, temperatures are likely to be close to or a little bit below the average, as I've been discussing, rather than if the winds were coming in from the southwest for the majority of the time, when it would be milder or even still warmer at this time of year. So, to summarise, week 1, wet weather dominates during the first few days, and it could also become windy at times. But as we head into the weekend, it turns brighter. That colder air moves down from the north, then high pressure builds in from the west, and showers become restricted to the northern half of the United Kingdom. That drier interlude, though, probably doesn't last for very long. By the end of the weekend into the early part of next week, low pressure moves in from the Atlantic. It brings further spells of rain, and it may be windy once more. Week 2 overall changeable with wet and windy periods, but also some drier spells, and they could lead to rather cold nights, especially in the north. The chance of those drier spells perhaps increases later on. Overall, temperatures close to or slightly below the average. So there we have it. It's a mixed bag of weather, I think very autumnal. In the short term at least, there is a likelihood of further heavy outbreaks of rain. They may well compound the flooding issues in parts of the UK. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. As ever, if you did, then please consider hitting the like button, and of course, do subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss any of my updates in the future. Also, stay up to date with the day-to-day weather developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.